Hello, everyone. It's Keith, your game master and master of games, here to talk to you about the hero or fantasy hero system. And we're going to cover combat this time, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Now, combat is there's two sort of important things that not all game systems have. In this game system, there's the ability to hit a target, and then the secondary is the ability of the damage to actually do damage or get through the defenses. So there's two separate stages to combat. And the first one is very simple. To hit a target, you have an 11 or less on 3d6. That's it. That's all you have to know. How do I hit? What do I have to do? You have to roll 11 or less on 3d6. That number is further modified by your offensive combat value, which is added to that, and then subtracted is your opponent's defensive combat value. So that number will then determine whether or not you hit. Further modifiers include range, maybe spell effects, maybe there's a limitation based on an unstable footing. Maybe you're in a wizard's grease spell, so it's harder for you to keep your footing, and that's providing a minus to your OCV. The list is wild, but anyways, you don't have to be too specific on what modifiers are. They're basically just modifiers, minuses and pluses. When you figure all of those out, you have a number. You roll your 3 dice. That'll determine whether or not you hit or not. Now, there's an optional rule called criticals that I am using, and that means if you make that roll by more than half of what you needed to hit, then you will get a double damage bonus. And that is rounded down. It's not rounded in your favor. So for instance, if it ended up being 11 or less, you'd have to roll a 5 or less to get a critical. A 6 will not cut it. So that is how attacking, hitting, and getting a crit. That should be pretty self-explanatory or pretty simple. Second part of there's actually a couple more things. If we look at this combat sequence checklist, it kind of covers it. You make your roll. Step 4 is if the attack was a spell or anything, you spend endurance. So you spend your endurance for the spell or the endurance that you use to normally attack with. The endurance should be on the character sheet. It'll tell you how much energy is expended by using that particular attack. There are ways that you can spend more endurance that's neither here nor there. So basically, calculate the endurance you use for doing the action you take. Regardless if you hit or miss, you're spending the endurance. That's pretty obvious. Okay. Next, if he hits, determine the damage and any effects of damage, then go to the next character's phase. So how do you determine damage and the effects of damage? Well, that's a little bit more complex, I guess, but it's very simple. We're going to look at a character sheet. We'll look at Mayor. So here are the defenses. Especially when you're wearing armor and has activations, this is something that might be a little bit confusing, but hopefully we'll clear this up right now. So you have a couple of different types of defenses based on the attack type, and your game master will explain to you what it is. Typically, it's pretty self-explanatory. Something like a lightning bolt would apply to your energy defense. Seems pretty obvious. Something like a punch or a club would apply to your physical defense. So there are two types of defenses you can see here, resistant and resistant. What happens with resistant is resistant applies towards pokey things. Think of stabby knives and pokey arrows and lethal damage. Lethal damage is applied to your body, and the only defense to pokey damage is resistant PD. So think of it like a big pillow. If your normal PD is a pillow and resistant PD is a Kevlar vest, so it's stopping the penetration, or something that's tightly woven like chainmail. Now, a good example of chainmail would be resistant PD, but might not help you against a smashing blow like with a club or a mace, because chainmail is just going to give in to the concussion, but protect you from the piercing and pokey. So that's an example of why there are two different types of defenses, if you will. Same thing with energy defense. If you have a lightning bolt, you could argue that could be maybe a thunderbolt would be regular energy. Maybe a heat blast would be normal ED, but a laser beam or something more, focused would be resistant, would be an energy killing attack. So that would be applied towards resistant. So the game master will explain to you what type of damage is being done. It's up to you as the player to understand. If I say I'm attacking you with a killing attack, energy killing attack, what is your resistant ED? Oh, my resistant ED in Mayor's case is 5. So what are these 14 or lesses? What does this mean? This means the activation cost to activate the additional armor. So I hope this isn't going over people's heads, and it probably is. So I'll try to slow down. You've got layers, okay? The defenses can apply in layers. Your physical body just being shirtless and hanging out, Mayor has a 5 physical defense. That's indicated right here. Then he has an additional 5, so plus 5 normal PD on a 14 or less roll. That means that he has armor covering the majority of his body, but you can still, it's not always going to be hit. So there's a chance that someone hits Mayor with a club, he doesn't make his 14 or less roll, so his PD is only 5. If he does make his 14 or less roll, then his PD is 10, 5 plus 5. So I attack, I ask Mayor, did we hit? Did we determine the hit based on OCB and DCB? Let's decide that we hit. Okay, I rolled a good number. You take the hit. I'm going to apply 15 damage, normal physical damage. Mayor looks down and says, okay, I have a 14 or less to activate my armor. I roll that. Did you make it? Yes. Okay, I have 10 armor. What gets through is 5. 15 damage, minus 10. You take 5. He would apply 5 stun right here. It would now say 35. Or he could do it. He could do hash marks with a pencil, Obviously, he probably has this printed out, hash marks with a pencil, or just have a little piece of paper next to you and keep track, minus 5, stun. You have 35 left. You're conscious. You're fine. You're not knocked out yet. If your stun is reduced to 0 or below, then that's when you fall to the ground unconscious. Okay? That same thing applies to energy damage. If I say, okay, the wizard strikes you with a lightning bolt, it's normal energy damage. You take, I rolled 20, and you look at your energy defense, you make your roll. Let's say you miss your roll. Oh, nope, didn't get my plus 5 energy defense. So now you take 20 minus 5, you take 16 damage. 16 stun off of 40. There we go. Now there is another important factor. I guess we can talk about resistance here in a minute. Killing attacks do apply differently, but that's how regular damage applies. So normal ED, normal PD. Let's talk briefly about what that damage can potentially do to you. You know that when you're reduced to 0 stun, you are unconscious. However, there's something also in the game called being stunned, and being stunned means you're reeling. It's like, professional wrestlers when they get that hit and they're like staggering around for 10 minutes. That staggered, that is being stunned. You've taken enough damage to make you reel. You're not unconscious yet, but you're not able to take an action. Being stunned is based on your constitution score. Your constitution score is how physically healthy and hardy you are. So if any damage in one specific attack does, after your defenses are applied, does more than your constitution, then you are stunned and will lose the next phase action. So, very important not to be stunned. Obviously, you don't have a lot of control over that, except having a good con, but keep in mind. So, characters like Arid, who has 13 con, Saphira, who has a 13 con also, are more in jeopardy of being stunned than, say, Tamer, who has a 20 con. Li Xiu has a pretty decent con, I believe. 18 con. And Mayor's another 18. So Except for a couple of people. The group is generally pretty tough, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But just be aware, if you exceed your constitution in a single attack, the damage it gets to your defenses, you will be considered stunned, and I'll let you know. Okay, let's talk about resistant damage. There's another type of attack called a killing attack, or that's pretty much what it's called, killing attack. Killing attacks apply to your resistant PD or ED, depending on the type of the attack, and these are generally lower amounts of damage, but they usually resistant defense is lower than regular defense. So in this case, resistant defense has nothing to do with your regular PD and ED. You can ignore that. You can only apply your resistant defense. In this case, Mayor the Scout has some armor on him. He has some magical leather armor that protects him 5 points of physical and 5 points of energy. And those only apply on a 14 or less roll, and that's it. That's the resistance he has. So killing attacks, although they're less dice, they can, they get past your armor, they're doing directly body. And there is something called the stun multiplier. You do still take stun when you're getting hit by killing attacks. The way that works is there's still shock to your system. So you get hit with a sword blow, you don't just ignore the pain. The pain of a sword being plunged into your chest, it definitely is lethal, and it will put you towards, closer to death, but there also is a shock to that. And there's also an impact, and there's also a system shock that will do stun to you. However, the regular defense you have does not apply. Only a resistant defense applies. So I will demonstrate that in combat. How there's a die you roll called a stun multiplier, and that is basically the impact of the blow. So let's say, for example, so you get hit with a sword, and it just kind of stabs through the meaty part of your muscle in your thigh, and although it does damage, there's not really a good stun multiplier, so you don't take a lot of stun damage. You just go, that really hurts, and you wince, and blood pours down your leg, and you're like, I'm ready to fight. But on the other side, let's say you take a blow, an axe to the skull, and it doesn't just, cleave into your skull and cause your head to start bleeding, but it also knocks the heck out of you, and you're reeling. So that would be an example of a high roll on a stun multiplier. You're taking damage, lethal damage, but you're also taking a considerable amount of stun. And again, that multiplier die is what's important. So for instance, if I do five lethal, normal, resistant PD, let's say Mayor misses his resistant PD roll, so he takes the axe directly to the face. The axe hits him in the face, I roll my damage, I do 5 damage, and then I roll my multiplier die, and it comes out to be a 3. Well, that would be 5 body and 15 stun. And because Mayor is 18 con, he would not be stunned, but he would apply his 5 body, and he would go from 15 to 10, and he would take the 15 stun and go from 40 to 25. So hopefully it's all kind of clicking at this point. And if it isn't, that's okay. We're gonna demonstrate combat, and eventually I believe everyone will start getting the system down. It's a very logical system, and it'll start making more sense when we actually go through the process. But I'm hoping that I fell in love with this game system based on the realism, and it made a lot of sense. I'll be doing my best to be explaining things with flavor in the game, so you'll understand what these roles actually look like and what they do, and it'll all sort of start gelling. But yeah, I guess I didn't want to make the video too long, but I did want to cover the ability of getting hit and how damage is absorbed. And then we will, I'm sure there's going to be a million questions, and that's perfectly great. We're all kind of learning this, or some of us are learning the system for the first time ever. So don't worry, don't be intimidated. It'll all start feeling like second nature, like riding a bike. You'll eventually just be like, all right, my OCV is 9, my PD is 15, and here we go. And you'll just get it. It just sinks in, and you'll just get it. So hopefully I did a good job explaining, but hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn, And I appreciate you taking the time watching this video. We'll see you next time for more excitement, and we'll learn more about Fantasy Hero. Have a great day.